Welcome to the Weekly Report, where I'll be recapping the previous week's biggest sports news and results. This will be so fast-paced, so pay attention and don't fall behind. Let's get started. So, college football. We had a wide variety of games this weekend, from top 10 upsets to dominant performances. But with the season coming to a close, let's take a look at how each top 10 team either solidified their spot in the rankings or completely lost all hope for their playoff aspirations. So starting off at the top, Georgia dominated their way to a 43-6 win over Missouri. They will definitely hold the top spot in this week's rankings. Alabama surprisingly struggled their way to a 20-14 win over an inconsistent LSU team, but will still hold a top 4 spot for the foreseeable future. Michigan State fell victim to the trap game, losing 40-29 to Purdue, who has now knocked off 2 top-ranked teams in the past 4 weeks. Oregon escaped Washington with a sloppy 26-16 win in Seattle, trying to solidify their top 4 spot. Ohio State had a tough time beating Nebraska and Lincoln, as most teams do, but despite their worst performance of the year, they made it out with the win, 26-17. Cincinnati squeaked by Tulsa 28-20, trying to make their case for being the first Group of 5 team to make the college football playoff. Michigan dominated their way to a 29-7 win over Indiana and are now officially back in playoff push following their Michigan State loss. Wake Forest undefeated no more, as Sam Howell and the Tar Heels spoil Wake's Cinderella story playoff push, beating them 58-55. And rounding out the top 10, Notre Dame cruises to a convincing 34-6 win over Navy, cementing their place in the top 10 for at least one more week. Now let's head to the NFL. This week was a wild one, to say the least. Top teams losing, underdogs coming out to play, and wild performances that nobody expected. Let's go through every game and highlight some things that maybe went wrong or went incredibly right. So starting off with the Thursday night game, the Colts versus Jets. Mike White's second career start that everyone was ready for. But this turned out to be the Jonathan Taylor show. JT ran for 172 yards on 19 carries and also had 2 touchdowns. Nyheim Hines also came out of nowhere, running for 74 yards and a touchdown. Carson Wentz had one of his best games of the year, completing 22 of his 30 passes for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now on to the Jets. The Jets, the underdog hero. Mike White came out of the game early after an injury, leaving third-string Josh Johnson as their only QB left, and he did not disappoint, throwing for 317 yards and 3 touchdowns, 2 going to rookie receiver Elijah Moore. This game looked like a blowout at first, but Josh Johnson pulled his team right back and almost spoiling all Colts minus 10 bettors, but the Colts prevailed, winning the game 45-30. Next game on the list had the Browns dismantling the Bengals 41-16. Baker Mayfield only had to complete 14 passes on the day, as Nick Chubb ran for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joe Burrow threw a couple costly interceptions, causing Bengals receivers to pump the brakes on their contender status. While this game was happening, the struggling Broncos were dismantling the offensive powerhouse from the Dallas Cowboys. Behind the hard running of running backs Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon, the Broncos at one point led the game 30-0 and ended up winning 30-16 after a few late-game touchdown drives by the Cowboys. Next on the slate was one of the worst games of the day between the Dolphins and the Texans. Dolphins' normal starter Tua Tagovailoa was out with an injury, leaving Jacoby Brissett to start, and the Texans did what the Texans do and lost the game 17-9. The Falcons found a way to stay 500 on the year as they beat the battered Saints 27-25, nearly blowing a 24-6 lead in the second half in proper Atlanta fashion on the way. But the Falcons kicker Younghoe Koo found a way to nail the walk-off field goal to put the Falcons on top and win the game. The Raiders are showing signs of ultimately losing their season a few weeks before they usually do, by losing 23-16 to the lowly New York Giants, who are without star running back Saquon Barkley. The Raiders' game plan was confusing to fans, as their running backs seemed to be playing well but only got 17 combined carries, less than both the Broncos' lead backs. The Patriots came with a big win over the Panthers, who seemed to be losing all footing after starting 3-0, now being 4-5. Sam Darnold continues to struggle, and Matt Rule seems to be falling off the Darnold train as well, as they lose 24-6. The absolute worst game of the day was Josh Allen and the Bills, losing to Josh Allen and the Jaguars. The Bills definitely played their worst game in recent memory, only scoring 6 points on the statistically worst defense in the league, eventually losing 6-9. Now, Lamar Jackson continues to show why he should be considered for the MVP, as he compiles yet another comeback win over the Vikings. The Vikings once led the game 24-10 in the third quarter, but behind Jackson's 386 total yards, the Ravens took the game in overtime 34-31. The Chargers squeaked out a win against the Eagles 27-24 behind the big arm of Justin Herbert, as he threw for 356 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts struggled to get things going today, only throwing for 162 yards and a touchdown to former teammate Devontae Smith, as Philly drops to 3-6. The Chiefs continue to struggle as they barely beat the Aaron Rodgers-less Packers 13-7, and yet another boring game to watch. Patrick Mahomes still struggles to find his rhythm as he hardly outplayed Jordan Love in his first career start. The Colt McCoy-led Cardinals beat the 49ers 31-17, never really giving the Niners a realistic chance. George Kittle, in his return from injury, was the only 49er that really looked good, as the rest of the team looked painfully bad. On Sunday night, the Titans beat one of the best teams in football in the LA Rams, 28-16. The Rams couldn't figure things out on offense or defense, and Adrian Peterson starts his first game 1-0. Finally, the Monday night game came down to the wire as Justin Fields came to life in the fourth quarter, leading a late touchdown drive with less than 2 minutes left on the clock. But out came vintage Big Ben, leading a drive that ended in a field goal that would ultimately win the Steelers the game, as the Bears missed a long field goal with the clock running down in typical Bears fashion. After I take a short break, we'll go over the NBA standings so far in this young season and review how each team looks so far. So let's start in the Western Conference. The best record in the NBA, currently the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry is doing his thing, just dropped 50 points on Monday night, and my mind is MVP so far this season. The number 2 team in the West is the Utah Jazz with a 7-3 record. The Jazz are always a team that will be good in the regular season with Donovan Mitchell's offense and Rudy Gobert's defense, but will have to show that they can continue their success in the playoffs to be taken seriously. The number 3 seed is the Dallas Mavericks. Somehow they are 7-3, but have looked absolutely awful to start the year. A lot of Luka and nothing else. Jalen Brunson has had a few games, but the Mavericks will have to continue this stretch to impress me. Number 4 is the Phoenix Sun. Chris Paul has been disappointing this year, but you know he'll pick it up throughout the season if he can stay healthy. And this team just went to the finals last year, so I'm not worried about what they can do. Number 5 is the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are one of my favorite teams to watch because Ja has been amazing this year. Averaging 26 points per game and 7 assists, he is not only looking at a most improved player, but also definitely trying to put his name on the MVP ladder. Number 6 is the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets have actually been good this year, largely in part to reigning MVP Nikola Jokic, but after Monday's incident, he might miss a few games due to suspension after he pushed Markieff Morris. Number 7 is the LA Clippers, who have been on a hot streak after struggling to start the year. Paul George would be in MVP conversations if the Clippers' record was better, and Reggie Jackson is showing that last year's playoff push wasn't a fluke, as he continues to provide them with much-needed scoring punch. Number 8 is the Lakers, who are the only team that everyone wants to see lose. Carmelo Anthony has been the team's best player as Anthony Davis struggles and LeBron deals with injuries. But this team has no fluidity and is painful to watch. But once LeBron comes back, I have no doubt they will turn it around. So wrapping up the current non-playoff teams are the teams that star players are struggling with, like the Trailblazers with Damian Lillard and the Kings with De'Aaron Fox. The teams that are young and dedicated to getting a better draft pick with the Thunder, the Rockets, and the Spurs. And then the downright disappointments with the Zionless Pelicans and the always disappointing Timberwolves. But the East is shaping up to be a very interesting race, as you got the top spot 76ers without Ben Simmons. The 76ers actually have a top offense in the league, which is weird because it might be showing that their offense is better without Ben Simmons. So maybe it's dropping Simmons' trade value even more. We will wait and see if they can keep it up. Second is the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat are one of the best teams in the league due to Jimmy, obviously, but also Bam Adebayo being the frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year, Tyler Hero being the frontrunner for Sixth Man of the Year, and Kyle Lowry's defensive impact and his ability to use his IQ to help the team. Number 3 is the Chicago Bulls, who have shown that their new acquisitions are positive ones, as DeMar DeRozan looks like he's the best player on the team, Lonzo is looking like a great starting point guard, and Zach LaVine showing his ability to score the ball and play at an all-star level. And although Nikola Vucevic has struggled offensively this year, he has shown that he can still make big plays when the team needs him to. Fourth is the Washington Wizards. The Wizards have made a lot of changes this offseason, adding Kyle Kuzma and Montrezl Harrell, who have been really good for them, along with Spencer Dinwiddie, who has shown that he can be a positive backcourt member with Bradley Beal. Fifth is the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are currently running a lineup with three 7-footers, starting with Jared Allen, rookie phenom Evan Mobley, and Lauri Markkanen when healthy. Mobley has been the biggest surprise for this team, as he was expected a slow start and learn the NBA as he goes, but he's looking like their best player. Sixth is the title favorites, Brooklyn Nets, who started off slow, but before last night were on a 5th-game win streak. James Harden is growing back into the all-star form we know him as, and LaMarcus Aldridge is proving to be one of the best role players in the league, and Kevin Durant is doing Kevin Durant things. 7th is the New York Knicks, who have looked good but not as good as last year. Julius Randle has struggled to start the year, not being as impactful as he was last year in his all-NBA season, and RJ Barrett has been an all-defensive team type player, but struggles to find his footing offensively. Hopefully they pick it up, as they can't afford to fall back in this tight Eastern Conference. 8th is Toronto Raptors, who have been a fun team to watch, with rookie Scotty Barnes doing amazing things. Fred VanVleet not only showing how effective he can be offensively, but also defensively, and they're going to have to make a decision when Pascal Siakam comes back and how they want to deal with that, because they may not want to run Pascal. They may want to keep Scotty Barnes in at the 4, but Siakam is on a max contract, so I'm excited to see how that goes. The rest of the non-playoff teams are still very tough. The reigning champion Bucks have been struggling with injuries, but everyone knows how good they can be. The Celtics are having a wide range of issues within the locker room that they will have to figure out if they need to make changes or not. The Hornets, Hawks, and Pacers all struggling with injuries and slumps, and just frankly disappointing seasons by players that you expect to flourish. And the Magic and the Pistons are losing, but that is what they expect, as they are young and in full rebuild mode looking for a top pick. So that's going to do it for the recap of the week and full week in sports. I'll be back next week to dive deep into the weekend and storylines from the week. I'll see you next time.